Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The moment unfolds still at first, the kind of stillness that only descends on Genoa City when fate is about to strike with ruinous clarity. The Abbott living room feels heavier than usual, not because of wrathfulness or contest, but because commodity implied has eventually reached the face. Jack Abbott stands near the window, his posture stiff, his face etched with the kind of restraint that has defined him for decades. Across the room, Nick Newman waits, doubtful why he was asked to come, seeing only that whatever is coming will change everything he allowed. He knew about himself. Jack turns sluggishly, his eyes glistering, and in that moment the walls that have always separated the Abbott and Newman families feel to dissolve. This is no longer about business wars or old grievances. This is about blood, verity, and a continuance of precisely buried secrets. Jack moves toward Nick, his countenance eventually cracking, and without advising he pulls him into a tight grasp. It isn't the calculated gesture of a rival seeking peace, but the hopeless hold of a man who has carried a secret for far too long. Jack's shoulders shake as gashes slip freely, times of guilt and craving pouring out in silence. Nick freezes at first, confused and overwhelmed, also sluggishly returns the clinch, seeing that this isn't just comfort, it is concession. The weight of that grasp carries decades of missed moments. Jack has watched Nick grow up from a distance, always feeling an inexplainable pull toward him, an instinct he could no way completely explain. He has defended Nick more fiercely than sense ever justified, felt pride in his palms and pain in his losses as if they were his own. In this moment, all those fractured feelings eventually align into a single, inarguable verity. Jack isn't just hugging Nick as a friend or former rival. He's holding his son. The room shifts again when Nikki Newman steps forward. Her face is pale, her eyes filled with an admixture of fear and resoluteness. Nikki has lived with this verity longer than anyone, guarding it with fierce determination, persuading herself that secretiveness was the only way to cover everyone involved. She has told herself that revealing the verity would only destroy lives, not save them. But now, watching Jack break down in Nick's arms, she realizes that the damage has formerly been done by silence. Nikki begins to reveal what has been hidden for so long. Times agone, during one of the most chaotic ages of her life, she participated a brief but profound connection with Jack, one that redounded in a child she believed she could no way raise under the Abbott name without kindling a war that would consume Genoa City. Victor Newman was the important force in her life also, and the world assumed Nick was his natural son. Nikki let that supposition come reality, burying the verity beneath layers of fidelity, fear, and love twisted by circumstance. As Nikki's disclosure settles over the room, Nick's world begins to fracture. Memories flash through his mind. Moments when he felt different from Victor. Times when he questioned why their bond felt strained in ways he could no way articulate. Suddenly, those dubieties gain clarity, and the consummation hits with stunning force. Jack isn't just a man who has supported him in quiet ways over the times. Jack is his real father. Nick steps back from the grasp, his expression torn between shock, wrathfulness, and a deep, paining sense of loss for the life he no way knew he was missing. His identity, long embedded in the Newman heritage, now feels uncertain. The name he has carried with pride suddenly feels deficient, not because it was a taradiddle, but because it was only part of the verity. He looks at Nikki, searching her face for answers, for defense, for commodity that can make sense of this disclosure. What he finds rather is remorse, raw and inarguable. Jack struggles to steady himself, his gashes giving way to quiet resoluteness. He doesn't rush Nick, doesn't demand remission or understanding. He knows that motherhood isn't commodity that can be claimed in a single moment, especially after a continuance of absence. But he also knows that from this moment forward, he'll no longer hide. The verity, formerly spoken, cannot be undone, and Jack is prepared to face whatever consequences come with it. Nikki's concession reverberates far beyond that room. The disclosure threatens to rewrite the history of two of Genoa City's most important families. The Abbott-Newman contest, formerly fueled by business and treason, now carries a deeply particular crack. Victor's shadow looms large indeed in his absence, his influence woven into every decision Nikki made. The knowledge that Nick isn't biologically his son has the implicit to shatter Victor's precisely constructed conglomerate, not just emotionally, but symbolically. The Newman heritage itself is suddenly called into question. Nick's feelings helical as he grapples with what this means for his relationship with Victor, for the man he believed was his father. Wrathfulness surges, not just at Nikki for keeping the verity, but at fate for stealing times he can no way reclaim. Yet beneath that wrathfulness lies commodity unanticipated, a sense of belonging he no way completely felt before. Standing in front of Jack, he recognizes pieces of himself reflected back. Moral conflicts, stubborn adaptability, a capacity for compassion that frequently put him at odds with Victor's ruthless worldview. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's heavy with possibility and fear. Jack reaches out again, this time more cautiously, offering not a grasp but a presence. He's ready to hear, to stay, to earn whatever part Nick may allow him to have. Nikki, meanwhile, braces herself for the fallout, knowing that remission may not come snappily, or at all. She has set Verity in stir, and it'll ripple through every corner of their lives. Outside the Abbott home, Genoa City continues on, ignorant that its foundations have just shifted. But it'll not stay ignorant for long. Secrets like this no way remain contained. Tales will spread, alliances will be tested, and old injuries will renew with renewed intensity. The disclosure of Nick's true lineage isn't just a particular reckoning, it is a catalyst for a storm that will gulf the entire city. The Verity doesn't simply land in Genoa City, it embeds itself, sluggishly and sorrowfully, into every heart it touches. After the disclosure, time seems suspended, as though the macrocosm itself pauses to absorb the weight of what has been spoken. Nick Newman remains embedded to the spot, his studies contending faster than his body can respond. Every memory of his life begins to rearrange itself, each moment now demanding reevaluation through the lens of this new reality. Knowledge, recollections of Victor's stern discipline, the constant pressure to be strong, to be ruthless, to be a Newman over all additional. Suddenly those recollections carry in strange distance, as if they belong to someone differently. Across from him, Jack Abbott watches quietly, knowing that anything he says now could fracture Nick indeed further. Jack has awaited his entire life for this Verity to come out, yet the moment feels nothing like palm. Rather, it feels like mourning for birthdays missed, assignments no way tutored, moments of comfort that Nick endured without knowing his real father was always just beyond reach. Jack's gashes aren't only for the history, but for the painful understanding that no future, no matter how hopeful, can ever replace what has been lost. The room still carries the echo of Nikki Newman's concession. Nikki stands piecemeal now, her strength visibly fading as the consequences of her decision begin to take shape. For times she believed she was guarding her son, shielding him from a Verity that would only complicate his life. She told herself that biology didn't count, that Victor's presence, power, and protection were enough. Yet as she watches Nick struggle to breathe under the weight of this disclosure, Nikki realizes that love without Verity is its own form of treason. Nick eventually moves, pacing the room as if trying to overrun his studies. He feels wrathfulness swell suddenly, not just at Nikki, but at everyone who ever looked him in the eye and claimed to know what was stylish for him. The sense of autonomy he fought so hard to claim now feels undermined by a history he was no way allowed to question. He wonders how numerous of his choices were shaped by a heritage that was no way truly his, how numerous battles he fought in Victor's name without knowing he was fighting for a story erected on illusion. Jack watches Nick with quiet desolation. Every step Nick takes feels like another memorial of how little Jack was allowed to share in shaping the man before him. Yet indeed now, Jack's instinct isn't to demand recognition or claim authority. It's to cover, to support, to be present in whatever way Nick will allow. Jack understands commodity abecedarian in this moment. Being a father isn't about biology alone. It is about tolerance, modesty, and the amenability to accept rejection if that's what mending requires. The disclosure doesn't stay contained within the Abbott home. In Genoa City, secrets have a way of percolating through the cracks, carried by suspicion, by pressure, by the subtle shift in how people look at one another. Long-standing battles begin to fluctuate under the strain of this new Verity. The Abbott-Newman peak, formerly defined by commercial warfare and particular vendettas, now carries an emotional fault line that threatens to collapse decades of history. Nick's internal conflict deepens as he considers Victor. the man who raised him, challenged him and shaped his worldview. Despite their conflicts, Victor was present. Victor fought for him, defended him, and demanded greatness from him. The idea that Victor may not be his natural father doesn't abolish those recollections, but it complicates them. Nick is forced to defy the possibility that Victor's prospects weren't simply paternal ambition, but a protuberance of heritage, one Nick was no way genetically fated to carry. Meanwhile, Nikki grapples with a different kind of reckoning. For the first time in times, she allows herself to feel the full weight of her decision. She remembers the fear she felt when she realized Jack was the father, the chaos of her life at that moment, the certainty that revealing the verity would enkindle a war she couldn't control. She remembers satisfying herself that silence was mercy. Now, she must defy the reality that silence also burgled Jack of fatherhood and Nick of verity. The emotional graveness of the situation begins to settle into commodity heavier and more continuing. Nick's wrathfulness doesn't explode. It simmers, dangerous in its restraint. He's not ready to forgive, not ready to embrace Jack as his father, and not ready to defy Victor with the verity. Rather, he withdraws inward, trying to reclaim control over an identity that suddenly feels fractured. For Nick, the path forward isn't about choosing between Jack and Victor, but about understanding who he's when stripped of prospects assessed by others. Jack, for his part, commits himself to a part that offers no guarantees. He resolves to be available without pressure, to offer guidance without intrusion, to love without condition. In private moments, Jack reflects on how different his life might have been had he known the verity before. How numerous miscalculations he might have avoided, how numerous battles he fought that now feel tragically ironic. Yet he refuses to dwell on remorse. What matters now is the present and the fragile future unfolding before him. Nikki becomes decreasingly apprehensive that her own connections may no way be the same. The trust Nick placed in her has been shaken, and she knows rebuilding it'll take further than explanations. She must defy the possibility that her son may part himself from her, not out of malignancy, but as an act of tone preservation. Nikki prepares herself for that reality, understanding that love occasionally requires accepting the consequences of painful choices. As days pass, the emotional foreshocks continue. Nick begins to notice subtle changes in himself, questions he no way allowed himself to ask now face with clarity. He finds himself drawn to Jack's values, fading parallels he formerly dismissed as coexistence. Jack's approach to morality, his emphasis on integrity over dominance, resonates with a part of Nick that always plotted under Victor's exacting gospel. These consummations don't abolish Nick's fidelity to Victor, but they offer him an indispensable lens through which to view his own nature. The impending battle with Victor looms like a storm pall over Genoa City. Everyone involved understands that the verity, formerly revealed, will enkindle a response unlike anything the city has seen ahead. Victor's response won't be limited to particular treason. It will ripple through business conglomerates, family alliances, and long-standing power structures. The question is no longer if the verity will come out, but when and who'll be standing when it does. In quieter moments, Jack allows himself to imagine what a future with Nick might look like. Not in grand gestures but in small, ordinary moments. Exchanges over coffee, participated advice, collective respect earned over time. These modest expedients feel both comforting and heartbreaking, monuments of what should have been, and what still might be possible. Jack understands that motherhood, indeed delayed, is a responsibility he's ready to shoulder completely, anyhow of the outgrowth. Nick's trip toward acceptance is neither direct nor predictable. One day he feels a sense of calm, convinced that knowing the verity, still painful, is better than living a taradiddle. The coming, he feels overwhelmed by resentment, visited by the time stolen from him. Through it all, he remains determined to define himself on his own terms. He's no longer happy to be shaped by prospects Newman or Abbott. He wants authenticity, indeed if it comes at the cost of comfort. Nikki watches these changes with an admixture of pride and anguish. She sees her son growing stronger, more tone-apprehensive, indeed as he pulls down from the world she tried to make around him. She understands now that protection embedded in fear can trick growth, and that love demands courage as much as immolation. Nikki resolves to face whatever judgment comes her way, believing that verity, formerly spoken, must be recognized completely. The disclosure eventually becomes further than a family secret. It becomes a glass reflecting the core themes that define life in Genoa City: power versus integrity, fidelity versus verity, and the enduring consequences of choices made in moments of fear. For Jack, Nick, and Nikki, the trip forward wa'n't be easy. Remission wa'n't come snappily, and mending wa'n't be guaranteed. But for the first time, their lives are no longer governed by deception. As the plot continues, the image that remains most important isn't one of battle or vengeance, but of vulnerability. Jack's gashes as he held Nick weren't a sign of weakness, but of profound humanity. Nikki's concession, however long overdue, represents a amenability to face the wreckage of her history. And Nick, standing at the center of it all, embodies the painful but necessary process of getting whole. In Genoa City, patrimonies are erected on names, fortunes, and influence. But this disclosure challenges the city to review what truly defines family. Blood may establish connection, but honesty determines belonging. And as the young and the restless moves forward, this verity will continue to shape every decision, every alliance, and every heart caught in its wake. In the days that follow, Genoa City doesn't erupt incontinently. Rather, it simmers. The disclosure acts like a slow-burning fuse, altering the emotional temperature of every room Nick Newman enters. He moves through familiar spaces with strange mindfulness, noticing how people look at him, how they speak to him, how the Newman name suddenly feels heavier than it ever did ahead. What once felt like armor now feels like a espoused fleece worn for times shaped by use but no way truly his. For Nick, sleep becomes fugitive. When he does rest, his dreams renewal fractions of his life, rearranged by the verity. Victor's stern blessing earned through immolation. Jack's unanticipated moments of compassion, formerly dismissed as coexistence. Nikki's constant balancing act. Her love fierce but conservative, always guarding commodity Nick no way understood until now. The consummation that his entire emotional frame was erected on deficient information shakes him to his core. He's not unraveling, but he's reassembling himself, piece by piece, without a chart. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott jests a reckoning unlike anything in his history. He has lost companies, marriages, and battles, but nothing compares to the quiet desolation of knowing how near he was to his son for so numerous times without ever being allowed to claim him. Jack finds himself reconsidering recollections with brutal clarity. Moments when he defended Nick against Victor, moments when he tasted a deeper connection and pushed it away out of respect, or fear, or abdication. Those instincts now feel predictive rather than foolish, and the consummation both comforts and haunts him. Jack doesn't essay to fit himself into Nick's life. He resists the appetite to call, to explain, to justify. Rather, he chooses restraint, understanding that forcing propinquity would only echo the control Nick has spent his life defying. This choice costs Jack deeply. Each passing day feels like another test of tolerance, another memorial that motherhood, delayed by decades, demands modesty above all additional. He's ready to accept any part Nick chooses to give him, indeed if that part is nothing at all. Nikki, for her part, exists in a state of emotional suspense. The concession has stripped down the defenses she erected over a continuance. Musketeers notice her pullout, her quiet moments of reflection replacing the countenance she formerly learned. Nikki understands now that verity isn't a single act, it is a process, one that continues long after the words are spoken. She's visited not only by Nick's response, but by Jack's pain, by the magnitude of what she denied him in the name of protection. As Nick distances himself, Nikki confronts a fear she no way allowed herself to completely admit, that in trying to cover her son, she may have shaped him into someone constantly searching for blessing that was no way genuinely his to earn. She begins to see how important of Nick's inner conflict stemmed from living under Victor's shadow, a shadow he was no way biologically fated to inherit, yet was anticipated to embody. The consummation breaks her heart in ways she cannot articulate. The implied presence swimming over all of them is Victor Newman. Though he has not yet learned the verity, his influence is far and wide. His name alone still commands apartments, still defines power structures across Genoa City. The impending disclosure threatens not just his relationship with Nick, but the veritably tradition of the Newman conglomerate. Victor erected his heritage on pedigrees, fidelity, and dominance. The idea that one of his most prominent heirs at law may not be biologically his is a crack in the foundation he spent decades fortifying. Nick grapples with how and whether to defy Victor. He understands that revealing the verity